Hello, and welcome back to Storytime with Yaz. I am your host, Yaz, and today we are going to talk about 20 random headcanons and theories that I have for Sunrise on the Reaping, considering what we know from my previous video. So if you have not yet watched my video about the cover of Sunrise on the Reaping, please go and do that before you circle back into this video, because we're gonna just be rolling off a lot of the things that I said in it. So, without further ado, let's hop into it. Before we begin all of my headcanons, I need to tell you what the 4 categories I'm splitting my headcanons into is. The first category is things that are Haymitch related. The second category is things that are games related. The third category is things that happened after the games in 12. And the fourth category is relational and other District 12 theories that I have that we're going to see in the context of this space. The first group of theories I'm going to talk about is, who is Haymitch? My first theory slash headcanon is that Haymitch is actually Cubby. So, if you watched my previous video, you would know why I think this. However, I'm just going to quickly reiterate for you. The main reason that I think this is because he is probably going to play the lyre in this book, and we're going to learn him as a musician. Now, we know that the majority of the musicians in District 12 were the Covey, so we have every reason to believe that if Haymitch was a descendant of the Covey, then he would also be participating in music, and we have no reason to say that he would know music if he wasn't a descendant of the Covey. The only person in the main trilogy that we know at all that plays music is Madge. That's it. And so I think it's plausible to think that a lot of music kind of died out post Haymitch's games. However, I do think Haymitch had a part to play in the Covey. Now, we know Tam Amber played a stringed plucking instrument, the mandolin, and we also know that this is in the same family as the lyre, which Haymitch is likely to play, as we can see from the cover of Sunrise on the Reaping. So I believe that this is probably the main reason that we're going to see that Haymitch turns out to be Cubby. Headcanon number 2 is that, along with being Cubby, Haymitch is actually going to be a shepherd boy. So cute, right? I get this from the story of David in the Bible. David was the musician that played a harp, and he was also a shepherd boy, and he also defeated Goliath, and then he was crowned king. So I think we're going to see a lot of David's story play out in Haymitch's character. I think he's going to be a shepherd boy. I think that he's going to shepherd goats, not sheep, which will be the slight difference, because we know that there is goats in District 12. We know this from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the prequel, that Tam Amber actually keeps a goat. And we know also later in the trilogy that Prim has a goat. So I think this is actually going to be one of the really fun kind of ties through to the whole story. And I wonder if Haymitch's dad is gonna be like Tam Amber slash the goat man that we see in the original trilogy. He might be a little too old, but it does seem like this goat man is super old, that Katniss buys Prim's goat lady from. I think this is going to be a kind of fun theory to like pull apart throughout the story. Along with this Haymitch is a shepherd boy theory, I think we're also going to see him having killed 2 lethal animals that have come to try to kill his little goat flock, and I think it's probably okay to say that there's a fox as an ode to Foxface and a wolf as an ode to he's sending them out like sheep among wolves. So I think they're the 2 animals that we're going to see, but it's also plausible that it's a bear. We see in the story of David that he killed a lion and a bear before he defeated Goliath, like Haymitch is going to defeat the capital Goliath. In this as well, I want to talk about the similarities that we see to the way that Haymitch and David are described. So Katniss describes Haymitch as young, strong, and hard to admit, but he was something of a looker. His hair dark and curly, those grey seam eyes bright, and even then dangerous. And the way that David is described in 1 Samuel 16:12 and 18, which says, "Now he was ruddy with bright eyes and good looking. He is skillful in playing the harp or lyre, a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a handsome person. So I think this shows that both David and Haymitch have some strength to them. How else is Haymitch going to get strength aside from if he has a job that's going to make him strong? So I think this is a plausible outcome for Haymitch to be a shepherd boy, because we know he hasn't got sent down to the mines yet because he's too young. So if you want to have a little bit more context to this headcanon, I would encourage you to jump on over to my last video. The third headcanon theory that I have is that Haymitch is going to have INFJ thought spirals just like Katniss, and it's going to mirror her a lot in his way of thinking, going from one extreme to the next, like that almost like confidence in their ability to everyone I loved has died and this is terrifying and terrible and I hate myself. Except we get that for Katniss in the span of 3 books. We're going to get that for Haymitch in the span of 1. And yes, I do believe that Haymitch, Katniss, and Snow are all INFJs, and their trauma has just presented in a different end outcome. I will be doing a video on this, so just wait, be patient with me, it will be coming. I want to get some bookmarks so that I can talk you through why I think these different things, and I think that it's gonna be better post Sunrise on the Reaping, but I'm gonna work on it before that for Katniss and Snow. So be patient, it is coming, but I can guarantee that this is what's gonna be the case. And I will say, when I heard about the announcement of Sunrise on the Reaping, that I literally said to a whole bunch of my friends, we are only gonna get Haymitch's point of view if he is an INFJ. And look at what we're getting! So you're welcome. I can almost tell you with certainty that this man is an INFJ. So I think we're going to see those little thought spirals like we saw with Snow and also like we saw with Katniss. And the second group of theories I'm going to talk about is games related theories. So my fourth headcanon is the arena is going to be like the Garden of Eden. So basically I've come to this conclusion because this arena is said to be the most beautiful arena. It's going to be so beautiful, it's shocking to most of the tributes, and Haymitch snaps out of it super fast, well before most of the other tributes. He's like, I'm at the cornucopia before most of them have even stepped off their plate. I'm out of there before anyone else is even in there. Like, we good. And I think this speaks to his ability to not fall to temptation, and I think this actually stems from him growing up in the Seam in 12 and his ability to recognize what is a trick and what's the truth. He understands quickly that there's going to be danger in the arena that is not necessarily seen, and I think it's going to lead him to be quite cautious when he starts seeing other tributes get tempted by things. I think he's going to be like, well, wait a second, this whole arena is actually temptation based, it's not based on fear like every other arena, and so it's much more dangerous, and this plays straight into my hand. I think he's probably going to have to watch his allies die a fair few times. We definitely didn't get a lot of Haymitch's story in the games in Catching Fire. We got the 90-minute capital version of what they wanted to show, and a lot of it didn't seem like it's super focused on Haymitch, just a couple of his battles with the Mutts, right? And what happened with the careers that he killed, which were his only kills, by the way, were careers just like Katniss. Fun fact. And then he's also probably just gonna watch a bunch of his allies die. So we know that he sees Maisley die, but we don't know if he had other allies that just walked off on their own too, which is why he's like, alright Maisley, like walk off on your own if you must. Like, I don't want to kill you, but he doesn't realize the trauma that's going to come from that moment. I wonder if we're going to get like Martation's snakes that are going to hiss at the tributes in order to like tempt them, like we see in Mockingjay with the Mutts in the sewers in the capital where they're like, Katniss, Katniss. And it's really creepy. Like, that's kind of what we see in the Garden of Eden in the Bible, and I think that there's something to be said for that as something that may happen in the arena for Haymitch also. I wonder if when Haymitch hears this and they're trying to tempt him, he's just going to sing back to them like to charm them, kind of like how Lucy Gray did with the snakes in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and she's like, oh, like, you know, I sang and they calmed right down and like whatever else. And I wonder if Haymitch is going to try that play and he's either going to sing to them or hum to them, like, and just see what happens. I think that would be really funny. Headcanon number 5 is Haymitch is going to sing in the arena. Now, I alluded to this in my previous point, but I'm going to place my bet on the fact now that Haymitch is going to sing. So I talked about this a bit in Haymitch's, like, who is Haymitch? But I believe he's Covey. I believe he knows all of Lucy Gray's songs, and I believe he's going to sing some of them in the arena. I have, since I knew about this book, said I can almost guarantee he's going to sing at least 2 songs that we know. I think he's going to sing Deep in the Meadow when Maisie is dying to her as she's dying, like Katniss does to Rue, and I think we're going to see him crawling to the edge of the arena, trying to keep his sanity, trying to like keep himself alive, trying to keep his head in the game, singing the Old There Before. Now, I don't have specific reference as to why, I just know Lucy Gray was singing this thinking she was going to die. And I just think it would be fascinating if he sang both of these things in the context of the same moments, like Katniss sang it and Lucy Gray sang it. We know what Snow's response was to Katniss singing that, and it was like, what the heck? And we also know what Snow's response to Lucy Gray singing it was, which was like, we have to have a winner. So I'm just saying, and I mean, he's gonna gain his voice through mourning, but I think, which if you watch my previous video you'll understand as well, with the mourning dove being a songbird, but I think that it's going to be added to because we're going to see it multiple times in this context, and it's probably going to really spark things, and people are going to start asking questions like, what do you mean? Why have we never heard these songs? Like, what are they about? Blah, 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 blah. And it's going to just create all these rumors that the Capitol are going to find very hard to quench, especially if people are still alive that remember Lucy Gray, right? Because we have to think about, in this time, in the 50th games, it was only 40 years post. Like, so all these people are going to be like their mid-50s that would remember Lucy Gray singing these songs in the arena in the Capitol, especially other Capitol students that are still alive, maybe even Snow's wife, Livia. She was a part of that crew mentoring, and so she knows who Lucy Gray is. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that plays out. Headcanon theory number 6 is that Haymitch's weapon of choice is actually going to be a slingshot. Oh, yes, what do you mean? He has a knife. Well, hear me out. I think that Haymitch probably is like the most comfortable with the slingshot. So just like we see Katniss being competent with a knife, it's not her weapon of choice, and I think the same is going to be for Haymitch. So I think we're going to see him like consider building his own slingshot. We might even see him training with a slingshot. We know that Rue is good with a slingshot, and we know that this is probably the skill she showed to the game makers. We know she had one on her in the games that she'd made herself, and she'd gotten like pebbles from the stream. So we know that Haymitch is likely to be able to make this on his own. We know it's an easy thing that you can make, so he's probably thought ahead and gone, if I ever go into the games, what would my weapon of choice be? Hold on, maybe I should have a slingshot. He's gonna see the trees, he's gonna see everything be poison and probably go, whoa, 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 is this a good idea for me to touch these trees? Because if I touch them, are they poison? I don't know about that. So I think he's probably gonna second guess himself and think twice about this, and that's why he lands on his weapon being a knife, but I think his initial weapon of choice is going to be a slingshot. To add to this, their careers that try to kill him, that he then fends off with his little knife, are going to have a sword, a javelin, a spear, and come to him with taunting words. Why? Because of David and Goliath. I have no other reason to say this. I just think it's going to be funny if I put this theory out there and then it comes to pass. So You're welcome. Theory number 7, Haymitch is actually going to want to go it alone, but he's going to have a bunch of tributes like find him and try to follow him and crown him as their like leader and be like, but Haymitch, you're the smartest in this whole game and it doesn't seem like you want to hurt any of us, so we trust you and we want to ally with you. And he's just going to be kind of like how he is with Maisley, how Maisley like shoots the little dart and like kills that courier that's about to kill him, and then he's like, well, I guess you just proved that it's easier for us to go it together. And so I think he's kind of just going to be like, alright, like follow me if you want, but like I'm not going to help you, so I'm just going to do my own thing. And then he's just going to be like marching along and they're just going to be like following him like a little pack of like, help! And we're going to see probably a lot of them like fall to their temptations, and Haymitch is probably just going to go, like, this is what I was talking about in my interview, like, and be like, they're 100% as stupid as usual, like, as each one of them dies off. Like, he's just gonna kind of like roll his eyes and be like, psh, like, of course they did that, like. So I think we're gonna see like a little bit of humor here, but at the same time he's probably still gonna be sad, right? Like, he's still gonna be like, oh, like, dang it, like, I wish that like that person didn't do that. That was like such a dumb mistake that was so easily like not made. I think this is gonna be part of why people are gonna kind of butt up against Haymitch, and part of the reason that they're kind of gonna give him like this like kind of kingly priestly robe and be like, hail Haymitch, kind of play up that whole king thing in the post, is because he had this like little band of tribute followers that were like, Haymitch is amazing, oh hell Haymitch. It's gonna add to this like arrogance and confusion that he's gonna see, because he knows how it actually was, but they're gonna probably just like show all the bits that make him look like he's like the leader of this like little rebellious pack, and they're all gonna be probably in there talking about things that are rebellious and not getting any airtime, and that's why we don't see it in the 90-minute condensed capital version of his games that Katniss and Peter watch. So I think it's going to bring on a lot of the capital hate, and it's probably going to have a lot to do with why we don't see a lot of Haymitch with like any other tributes, and it's literally just him like head down, bum up, like walking to the edge of the arena, not really talking or dealing with anyone until Maisley. So they have some dialogue which probably can be shared, but not much, because they're both smarter about how they use their words, which it's probably one of the first times that District 12 ever had two 16-year-olds reaped in the same year, which is probably why Katniss and Peter getting reaped later on is so off-putting, because again it's like these two 16-year-olds that are defying the Capitol. Headcanon number 8. This one's a little spicier, but it's that the arena is going to be filled with the eldest twin. Now we already know that Maisley was a twin, Madge's mum is Maisley's twin sister. We don't know her twin's name. We also know that Haymitch has a younger brother. What we don't know is how much younger Haymitch's brother is. So I wonder if the Capitol thought, if we have to make this quarter quell something that's really going to quench the rebellion, how can we do this as best as possible? How do we keep no stone unturned? How do we really make this like hurt the rebels the most that we can hurt them? And I think they probably landed on, let's pull 48 families apart, 47 really, but like let's pull as many families apart as possible. And that means instead of sending in sets of twins, they're gonna send in the eldest twin of each family. And so I wonder if that was kind of why we had 16-year-olds drawn, because it seems to me like a lot of the kids that are drawn from District 12 specifically are way younger. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of like older tributes that are often drawn from District 12, which is really interesting considering how much tesserae they get. So I was thinking about this and I was like, how could two older tributes get reaped? And I think this is probably one of the only ways. I know a lot of people believe that the reapings are rigged. We see this in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes with Lucy Gray, but obviously the rules changed between the mayor doing the reapings and escorts doing reapings. So I think it's really important that we consider that the Capitol does have a lot more control with the Capitol escorts as well, to make their points very clear. I wonder if all of these twins are almost going to be spitting images of each other, to the point where their parents look at the alive twin, the younger twin, they're gonna see their older child as well, and it's going to be a literal like sucker punch to their guts, like every single time they look at their child being like, your twin is dead. And I think that would perfectly describe how the capital often deal with the people in the districts. I think it also speaks to the way in which we see Haymitch described in the books, in his original reaping, in the 50th game, the change between that and how he looks by the 74th games when Katniss and Peeta are reaped. We see in the movies that they could have done anything they wanted with Woody Harrelson as the actor who plays Haymitch, but they chose to give him straight blonde hair when it is described that Haymitch originally has dark curly hair. He also has grey eyes in the book, the grey seam eyes that Katniss knows and loves. But in the movie he has very, very vibrant blue eyes, which are the actor's natural eye colour. And so I'm wondering if at the end of the Hunger Games, when Katniss comes out of the arena and they're trying to do augmentations on her, if he knows we're not touching her because of what happened to him and because of how he was treated when he got back to 12 because of this. I think when Haymitch goes back to District 12 from the capital and he looks completely different, they're all gonna be like, who is this? Even he might be getting crowned victor looking completely different, and they're all gonna be like, what? And they're not gonna know that Haymitch didn't have a choice, because if Haymitch was like passed out cold, dead and resurrected, like who knows at this point, because Haymitch could have died. Peeta, his heart stopped when he was on the operating table after he got pulled out of the arena. Katniss says that. Haymitch wouldn't have anyone vouching for him to like keep him safe and keep him looking how he looked when he went into the arena. So I think it's plausible to think that they could have done these augmentations when they were stitching his body up and helping him heal without his knowledge, without his consent, and without him knowing anything about it. So he's literally shipped back to District 12 a completely different person than when he arrived in the capital. And so I think that's going to play into the dichotomy of that real or not real. Now I look completely different. Now I'm outcast from the scene because I have money. Now I have to live in Victor's village, but I'm alone. Now I look like the merchant class, but I'm Seam, but I'm a Victor. It's gonna be really swirly and really hard for Haymitch to grapple with. So I think it's going to take a lot for him to really understand where he fits when he gets back, and then add to that all the trauma of the arena, add to that all the executions that are going to take place. So this poor boy is going to be going through it, which brings me to my next group of theories, things that happened after the games. Headcanon theory number 9. We are going to see so many executions in District 12 after the games. Haymitch is going to be terrified about this. I have this sinking feeling in my gut that Snow is going to be like, it's the things we love the most that destroy us, and he's going to have this speech to Haymitch similar to what he does to Katniss, and he's going to be like, we don't know the time or the place, so you best watch out. And he's gonna know that a bunch of his friends and family of friends are gonna die, but he's not gonna know who, and he's not gonna know when, and he's not gonna know who's the next target. And so he's not gonna know who to tell. When he cries wolf to one person, they're gonna like probably turn around and be like, but I didn't get killed today, so I'm not next. He's just gonna be like day after day seeing people die. Some of them will drop dead by poison, some of them will drop dead by a whipping post, some of them will be crucified, some of them will be hung, some of them will die in a fire. Like, we don't really know what we're gonna see, but we know we're gonna get a lot of violence. We know we're gonna get a lot of people executed. We know for sure that his little brother and his mum and his girlfriend get executed, but I'm gonna say we're gonna see some pretty important and powerful people in 12 executed as well. We're probably gonna see the mayor of 12 or his wife executed for what Haymitch did. I think we're gonna see new people implemented into power in 12. All of them are gonna know that this happened because of what happened around the games, and all our friends and family died too, not just Haymitch's. Anyone that had anything to do with it is also gonna have their mouth shut, including Haymitch, which is why we don't know much of it from Katniss's perspective, because she's never been told what happened around the 50th games, not even by her mother. Katniss didn't even know in Catching Fire that her mother and Haymitch had any kind of friendship or relationship. She didn't know that Haymitch had brought his people, his friends, and potentially even himself for healing to her mum. On that note, my headcanon number 10 is that we're going to see a lot of arranged marriages in order for people to keep the silence. So I think the three major ones that we're gonna get with the like main characters and characters that we know in the trilogy are the Malarks, like Peter's parents, the Everdeens, Katniss's parents, and the Underseas, Madge's parents. Now I have my reasons for believing this, but it is my current working theory, headcanon, that all of them were involved in this space around things to do with Haymitch's games. We know for a fact from what Katniss describes in the books is that her dad was friendly with a lot of people in town. He would have a warm drink with people near the bakery on a regular basis, and Katniss would sometimes go with him. It'll be really interesting to see if a lot of that is like rebellion oriented. I wonder if we'll start to see that in this Sunrise on the Reaping. I'll talk about my relational theories in a little bit, but I think we're gonna start to see a lot of how the main relationships between Mr. Undersea and Mr. Malark are connected. I think we're gonna see Katniss's mum and Madge's mum being connected. I think we're gonna see Peter's dad and Katniss's dad being connected, and I think all of this is gonna play out in a really intricate, detailed, and interesting way that's gonna give us a lot of context as to why all the parents are the way they are in the trilogy. I think a lot of these arranged marriages were for specific reasons. I think Madge's mum and the Mayor Undersea was probably appointed after the 50th games, and his parents were probably executed, or his grandparents maybe were executed. His grandparents would have been around and probably part of the rebellion, I'm guessing, and they may even have memory of Lucy Gray. Maybe they were appointed after Mayor Lip, is it? That is the mayor in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. There's gonna be a lot of kind of chit chat around that. That's gonna be very interesting. But I think that because of what Madge's mum knows and because of what the mayor knows, Snow's gonna come in and be like, you're together. You need to shut up, and I need someone who knows the power and authority that I have in this city and in this district and in all of Panem to keep the silence. And it's important that you keep the silence or you're getting executed in front of your whole district. And I think we're also going to see the same with like Peter's parents. So we know that Peter's dad was a very well renowned and respected man, and if he had anything to do with this little underground rebellion that was happening, I'm sure that he kind of goes, hold on, this girly pop over here, she seems like she's really mad about this whole situation. You know what we're gonna do? She's showing me traits that remind me of myself. We're gonna put her with the one that has the most hope over here. So Peter's parents got together, and the result was Peter living a traumatized life. And then we also saw Katniss's parents get together. They had much easier ways to kill Katniss's dad and pull apart her family than they did to pull apart Peter's family, which is why he needed to be a child of an abusive situation. So we can see Katniss's mum and dad coming together, and the result of Katniss's mum's rebellion being that she gets demoted out of the merchant class into the scene. And so I think all dynamics play out completely different to keep them separated and silent. And only those 6 people know exactly what happened. The only other potential person knowing anything being Haymitch, who is already secluded, as if you've watched my previous video, you would understand why he is standing secluded, because there was this swirl around what's real and not real, who believes me and who doesn't believe me, and is everyone that I come close to going to end up dead. I think this would also perfectly describe the way that Peter's dad still has a very clear connection point to Katniss's family, even though he knows he cannot be speaking to Katniss's family. And so I think this would be really interesting to see played out in real time with Peter's dad and Katniss's dad having interactions and things like that. Headcanon theory number 11. Victors as mentors happened after the 50th games. Yes, what do you mean? Surely they all had mentors before. I don't think so. I'll get to another theory in the next point, but I think this happened to give Haymitch extra punishment for his rebellion and him not being able to quench the rebellion in the districts on his victory tour. I can almost hear Snow saying, what else are we going to use the extra rooms for? You know how they have the extra rooms because there were 4 kids? We see that like the tribute center that Haymitch would have been the first tribute in is the same tribute center that Katniss and Peter were tributes in before the 74th games, and then they got a new tribute center for the 75th games. So the 74th games tribute center would have been the same as the 50th, which means that every floor is going to have 4 rooms for the tributes. But wait, what do you mean? There was only 1 games that had 4 tributes. Yeah, that's because after that, they're going to give them to the mentors. How unhinged. It wouldn't have been fair to have mentors for every district prior to this because not every district had a living victor. Not that the capital ever play fair, but I don't think that they would be doing that willy-nilly. I think that Snow is literally going to think that this is a way that I can hurt Haymitch more because now he's going to have to watch kids that he mentors die. I know what that feels like because I was a mentor. I know that this is a hard job. If we're not giving it to a capital citizen, which we shouldn't because trauma, we need to give it to the winners so they have more trauma because they haven't been doing a very good job at keeping the rebellion quenched, you know. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting propaganda play because the capital is going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, the victors get to come here every year, and the districts are going to be like, what the actual frick, but also maybe we have a little hope because now we have someone that's actually going to help us on the outside. Which leads me to my next headcanon theory number 12, which is that escorts had the role of mentor before victors did, and basically they dealt with all of the different sponsorship deals before the 50th games. So post the 10th games until the 50th games, I think they introduced in the 11th games escorts. Escorts, their job was to escort their tributes from the districts, picking their names out of the bowls, to the capital, and then in the capital deal with their sponsorships. Snow knows we can't be giving this job to capital citizens because like they're just going to be traumatized. That wasn't a fun time for any of us. We're not doing that again. That's so stupid. But what can we do to ensure that there are no rebels in the capital like Sejanus? Right? And so he's going to be like, maybe we should like just torture these escorts and then figure out what district they really like, and to torture them even more, brainwash them, try and use this new technique called hijacking on them, brainwash them into then becoming like the epitome of the capital elite, tell them that they're the capital elite, then they go out to the districts, collect our tributes, bring them back, brainwash our tributes, and then they're the ones who are like beautified, made up, whatever, and then they're told to go out and do all of the things that victors had to do. So if we think about what escorts in general are, they're the ones being trafficked. It's often referenced that escorts is another name for people who are being trafficked. So I think it's plausible to say that escorts were in the role of victors before victors were told they had to submit to trafficking. We find out that Finnick was a part of, Joanna refused, and all of that kind of thing. With this as well, I think the other thing is, I wonder if they were even like starved and beaten before they were put on display to ensure that they did everything right. So if we think about how Peter was treated in the capital prior, but he always looked the part when he was being shown to the citizens, I wonder if this is how we're going to see escorts look. So that they'll be kind of like starved and beaten, but then put on display in fancy, ridiculous clothes that they would have hated before because they didn't want anything to do with the capital. And my next group of theories that we're going to talk about is relational and District 12 things. Headcanon theory number 13 is names. This is going to be a little lengthy, so bear with me, but I believe that there is a rhyme and a reason to every District 12 name, so I'm actually going to use my notes on this one and read a little bit because I think this is really important. So the first name headcanon theory that I have is Peter's mom is actually named Pearl. And I think this would be brilliant if this is true, because this will hurt his mum when Peter is in the arena with Katniss and finds the pearl in the clam, and then he gives it straight to Katniss, tells her how wanted and how much she should survive for her family and all that kind of thing, and then he's like, I have no family, nobody loves me, nobody wants me, nobody needs me, and Katniss is like, I do, I need you. It's gonna show that Peter was very, very smart with his words, and that he knew that if in that moment he was literally like, I'm willing to completely lay my life down for this girl that I love because my mother told me that I was nothing. His mom is then gonna have to grapple with that, and that's gonna be like quite literally one of her last thoughts, because later that night they get firebombed. Peter handed Katniss a locket of her family in that moment after giving her the pearl, and then she circles back and goes, I need you, and he's like, you're the only thing I have to live for. If I can't live with you, I don't want to live at all. And I think that's a really humble thing to say, in a humble way for him to say, hey mum, I love this girl more than you showed me love. With the pearl, it's also a symbol of how Peter recognizes he has something of great value in Katniss. He was not something of great value to his mother. This person showed me no love, so the love that I could have given them, I'm now going to give to someone else that actually deserves it. I also thought Pearl was funny because Effie says that line about, if you put so much pressure on coal it turns to pearls, and then that's what Peter and Katniss are laughing about in that moment when Peter finds a pearl and he's like, hee, here it is. Not that that's true, we all know that that's not true, but pearls are found in clams, clearly. But we also know that they're named a lot dependent on what they do. So especially in the merchant class, they're named around their trade. So I would say that Peter's dad is named after some kind of bread, and I was thinking about the bread that they would get in, like, be able to make with the tesserae grains, and to me it sounds like there are two different plausible options this could be, Ezekiel bread or rye bread, and for different reasons, and depending on which route Suzanne Collins wants to take the name meaning, I can see it being either, but I can see it being a hint to Peter's dad being part of the rebellion because he's naming something after a tesserae grain. If that makes any sense. I think it will be like Ezekiel or rye or some kind of derivative of either of those breads. And my next theory is Katniss's mom is going to be named Harmony, which is a apothecary term that talks about like the union between different elements. And this is going to speak to her as a character, her as the apothecary's daughter and a healer, and also her union with the covey, because harmony is also a musical term. It biblically means to agree. So it also talks about that she agrees with the people of the scene, she agrees with the covey, she agrees with all of that, but at the same time it's in a way that complements it, and I think that she will be a complementary person into the covey because of who she is and what she brings into that lower class in the scene. When I was thinking about names for Katniss's dad, I was kind of like searching around being like, well, I know the covey are named after lyrical ballads and then a colour. And by then I don't think they're going to be allowed to say the colour that they're named after per se, especially if their name's a little longer. But I was looking at different lyrical ballads and being like, which one fits with Katniss's dad? And I kind of landed on this ballad that talks about two brothers, Matthew and William, and it talks about how they used to sit on a fence and wrestle things out with each other. So like the older brother and the younger brother, and I went, you know what, I wonder if Katniss's dad was a younger brother, because it seems more like what we know of his character from what Katniss tells us. So my theory is that Katniss's dad is going to be called Maddie, short for Matthew, and his older brother is going to be called Will, short for William. And I know that Suzanne Collins often will change like a letter or something like that to make it like more her, so it's not so normal and it's like a little different, a little more old school, a little more interesting. And so I think we're going to get, if not these names, some kind of derivative of these names. Maddie, which is what I'm going to assume Katniss's dad's name is, means mighty in battle, and Will means desire. And so I think we're going to see maybe the older brother be executed for something because he has a desire to tell the truth, but he's not mighty in battle like Katniss's dad is. When I was like thinking about all of this, I also thought about what Haymitch's name might mean, because we know that Suzanne Collins names everyone with intention. And there was two things that I found: that Haymitch is a derivative of Hamish, which has the same meaning as Jacob and means supplanter, or someone who takes the place of, which, let's be fair, the king thing that I was talking about earlier, that's going to come into play here. And it also means, if you break it down, the beginning part, hey, means guardian or custodian, and Mitch means who is like God. And what we see in the original trilogy, when he then takes care of Katniss and Peter, is that Katniss is like the lion of the tribe of Judah, like the lion version, and Peter is like the lamb. So the two sides of like Jesus, the lion and the lamb, the first coming and the second coming. And I think that's really interesting in and of itself. Then if we look at Peter, which means rock or stone, when it kind of links to Haymitch kicking off that stone off the edge of the force field and then being like, wait a second, and then throwing the stone, which is a form of praise. I talked about it in my last video, so go and watch it if you're curious. It's the same one that means to dance basically with all your might and dance your clothes off like David did, which is who Haymitch is symbolic of in the Hunger Games. To break down Katniss, there are a few things that I thought was really interesting. Cat means pure, clean and clear, and Nis means to test and nut out. So essentially Katniss means to test for purity and nut it out. And Haymitch's name then is going to mean basically the guardian of the liberator, which is crazy. Back to my headcanon names. I think Haymitch's girlfriend is going to be Covey, and I think she's going to have a name that's symbolic of the sunrise and how she's going to die. So I imagine that her name is going to be something like Dawn Ash, or maybe like Aurora something. It's going to have the double-edged meaning of like this beautiful ray of hope and this phoenix rising from the ashes, but also like she might die. She's gonna die at some point, we know that, but I think it's gonna be symbolic of both the fire and the quenching of it. That's all that I have for now with the names theories. Headcanon number 14. The Underseas are actually from District 4. Dun, dun, dun. What do you mean, Yaz? Well, Lucy Gray basically says that during the Dark Days and the Rebellion, that there was a lot of travel between districts. We know that she traveled a lot as a child, and then she got confined to District 12 when they started putting up borders and the peacekeepers started rounding them up. It was like wherever they were was where they ended up. And so I think it's logical to think that the Underseas with a name like Undersea were probably from District 4, the fishing district. It doesn't really match with District 12 in any way, their last name Undersea, There's like nothing about that screams District 12. There's no real water that we know of in District 12 aside from the lake in the forest. It doesn't really make any sense for me that they're from 12. So either the capital sent them to 12 or they were in 12 as part of the rebellion and Snow just didn't put it together when he appointed them after the 10th games, or whoever appointed them after the 10th games as mayor. I think it speaks to the connection point that 4 and 12 have. We do see this throughout the series. We see it in the original Hunger Games book when Peter's closest ally in the career pack was the girl from 4. We see it with Finnick and Haymitch, and then how Haymitch forces Finnick to partner off with Katniss and Peter with Mags, and we know that Mags was a huge part of the rebel plans. I think it's really feasible to say the connection between 4 and 12, which is on both edges of like both kind of coasts of Panem, even if 12 doesn't actually get to see the coast and the water, like it's on the edge. It speaks from like coast to coast across the middle of Panem is where 4 and 12 are, so it literally would cut the capital and like the capitals in between them. It would like cut the capital in half. The partnership between 4 and 12 is probably the most important in the entire rebellion. I a couple days ago stumbled across Jeremiah 16:16, which says, "Behold, I will send for many fishermen, says the Lord, and they shall fish them, and afterward I shall send for hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill and out of the holes of the rocks." And I thought this was really interesting because we know that there was a lot of victors, or far more victors from District 4 than there was from District 12. And the fact that they partner up and that this is like kind of shown because of that, like we see literally Finnick and Katniss are part of... Wait, was Finnick part of what happened in the Nut? I don't remember. No. Was Finnick part? Finnick wasn't part of what happened in the Nut. But I think that it's interesting to think of like what happened in the Nut, because then people did have to come out of the mountain, out of the holes in the rocks in the mountain to Katniss and to her feet, and she gave them the opportunity for mercy. But this also speaks to the impenetrability of the capital. In their perception, we see this quite literally play out throughout the trilogy, is that this connection between 4 and 12 is important, but we don't really understand it and we don't know why. Which is interesting because I think 4 have everyone fooled. I think 4 have played the capital the best out of all the districts, because they were like, yeah, we're totally a career district, we love the capital, we support them, but in reality all of them were working behind the scenes. Like all of the victors from 4 were working behind the scenes hustling for the rebellion, and they just didn't know. I found all of that very interesting when I was considering that the Underseas might be from District 4, and I do think the Underseas kind of had some level of understanding. I think we see that in Catching Fire. I think there is like a scene where Katniss sees something at the mayor's house about District 4. She sees it about some district that's in rebellion, and I was like, wait a second, that's so interesting. I would love to have my memory jogged of that, but I just thought of that off the top of my head just now, so please help. Yeah, that's why I think the Underseas are from 4. Headcanon theory number 15. Haymitch was besties with Katniss's dad. We love this theory. People who don't applaud this theory, like, I feel sorry for you because I can't wait for it to be true. But I think this is probably how Haymitch kind of loosely knew how to handle a knife, because it doesn't seem like a knife is a super plausible weapon for a games like Haymitch was in. But I also have this like cute little headcanon that Katniss's dad and Haymitch went and mined maple syrup once in the trees, which is how Katniss knows what a spile is, and Haymitch knows that she's gonna know what a spile is. How else would Haymitch know? I feel like this has to point to the fact that he has to know Katniss's dad, because to give her a spile in Catching Fire knowing that she's gonna know what it is and watching her figure it out would have been so infuriating for Haymitch, because it took her a while to remember what a spile was, and he's probably just stood there like, girl, I literally know you used this with your dad because I used it with your dad. That would be so funny. But I do think that they did this, and there's probably a cute little story that's going to come up, because I wonder if Haymitch is going to be trying to think of things, ways that he can hydrate himself, because we know that the only water that was available to the tributes in the 50th games was the rainwater. So I wonder if this is one of the things he's going to think about when he's dehydrated, like, oh, I wish I had a spile so I could tap a tree, and then he's going to be like, but wait, the trees are probably poison. I had this experience when I was living in Canada where we tapped a maple tree with a spile, and I'm in my head this is going to happen, but we tapped a maple tree with a spile, we got the maple syrup, swirled it on a popsicle stick, and then stuck it in the snow and turned it over and made it into like a maple syrup popsicle. And I was like, how cute if they did that and then set up a little stand for all the kids in the seam to come and get a sweet treat because it was a really terrible winter or something. Can you imagine how heartwarming that's gonna be? Headcanon number 16 is that Katniss's dad is Maud Ivory's son. Why do I think this? A lot of people think this. A lot of people think this, guys. It's not new news, I don't think, this theory. But the way that it's described that Maud Ivory learns song is similar to how Katniss's dad learns song and then how Katniss learns song. And so I think it's plausible to think that Maud Ivory was Katniss's dad's mum. Wow, that is a tongue twister. This would help genetics-wise for Katniss's mum and dad to have a child that is super white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and another kid that is a little darker, more olive toned, grey eyes, dark hair. Because there was probably one of each in the last 2 generations. And so this is a plausible outcome genetically for Prim to have blonde hair and blue eyes and Katniss to have dark hair and grey eyes. And we know that Katniss's dad had the same traits as Katniss, and Katniss's mum had the same traits as Prim. So it's also fair to say that if Katniss's grandmother was Maud Ivory, that her grandfather would have probably had dark hair and grey seam eyes. So genetically this checks out for how the kids can look so different. The way that the Cubbies sing to process their emotions, this is also how Katniss knows that her mum's okay again, is that she taps into what she learnt from Katniss's dad, which is you sing when you're ready to process your emotions. And this is also something that Katniss comes back to at the end of Mockingjay, when she's basically trying to starve herself out to end her life, and then she just randomly starts singing again for the first time in a really long time. And she remembers a lot of things about her dad and about all these things that she's suppressed, and as they come back up, it brings with it a bit of hope again as well. And I'm assuming that Maud Ivory married some kind of dark hair, grey-eyed C minor man to mellow out those like Covey roots, but they're still gonna absolutely come out in the children. Number 17 is that Haymitch is actually dating a girl descended from the Covey. I know what you're thinking. Yes, if Haymitch is Covey and Katniss's dad, Maud Ivory's son, is Covey, how can Haymitch be dating a Covey girl and not be related to Katniss? Well, who said they're not? Who said they're not? Just kidding. Because Haymitch doesn't have children. But I think it's plausible to think that Haymitch was dating someone in the Covey if he was Covey. Whether or not they were married into the Covey is beside the point. He is probably dating someone in the Covey. Definitely, if he's not Covey, he's definitely dating someone in the Covey. But I think he is Covey and he's dating Covey, and this is why I think it. I think that this is what's going to tie all of the storylines together. If all of the storylines are around people in Maud Ivory's family, then if this member of the Covey is maybe like his best friend's little sister or something along the lines of that, like Katniss's dad's little sister, I think this would make for a fascinating story, and it would be really interesting that Katniss knows nothing about it. Katniss doesn't even know that Haymitch had family that died after his game. She doesn't know a thing because she's never asked. Right? Because she's too afraid. She's told to hide her emotions in chapter 1 of the book, right? It's really important that we understand that Katniss is shielded from a lot because her parents were afraid. And so I think it would be plausible to think that maybe there was a family connection of someone who died in and around that time, because of what happened in Haymitch's games, but that her family don't actually hold it against Haymitch at all. This is probably a big reason why, especially if the girl that he's dating resembles Prim more, like Maud Ivory, more than she does the dad, then I think it's really plausible for Haymitch to have the guttural reaction he has to Prim being raped and then Katniss stepping in for her, because he will literally be remembering his best friend and his girlfriend and it will be like 2.0 trauma, like rehash, coming straight to the surface and hitting him full force, and he's like, oh no, I couldn't save my friend and I couldn't save my girlfriend, so I have to save this child. And that's why he speaks up, falls and face plants off the stage. Headcanon theory number 18 is that Peter's dad and Katniss's dad are good friends. Here's why I think this. Peter's dad is probably going to get a lot of the town hot gossip during and before, because people are all going to be wanting to go to the bakery and getting bakery bread, right, at this time. And I think Katniss's dad, because he's like a little hunter boy, is going to be selling game to a lot of people. So I think they're both going to have like a wide well spread of knowledge, and they're both going to be some of the most liked people in all of District 12. And I think that they're naturally just going to hear a lot of rumors and gossip and be able to like put them together and have their own little friendship on the side. I don't think they're best friends. I think Peter's dad's probably best friends with like Mayor Undersea, right, at the time of these games. They were good friends and that they had a lot to do with each other because they wanted the well-being of the citizens of 12 to be of the utmost importance. And Katniss's dad knew that Peter's dad could talk to the mayor or the mayor's son to make that happen. This speaks to the care that Peter's dad shows to Katniss by coming to visit her after he visits Peter in the goodbyes, like after they get raped. He brings her like cookies and he promises that he's gonna make sure Prim is fed. Why would he do this if he didn't have a prior existing relationship to the Everdeens? From what Peter's heard, his dad was almost like promised to marry Katniss's mum, but then she ran off with a coal miner who had a beautiful voice. We know from my previous headcanons that's not going to be the case. They're going to be arranged marriage, right? So I think it's plausible for him to be like, I still feel a responsibility to keep my friends' children safe. If both of my child and one of my best friend's children dies, then I want her to know that her family will be taken care of by me. I don't care what my wife says, because my wife clearly wants you dead. I think this is going to be a really interesting way to kind of like introduce his character and Katniss's dad and have them have some kind of really beautiful friendship. It's going to come out in what we see in the trilogy, and that Peter's dad actually does really care for Katniss and Prim. And there's a reason for that, because he knows that they lost a really incredible dad. And he wishes that they didn't lose their dad. Headcanon theory number 19 is that Katniss's mom and Madge's mom are friends. We know that this is already true, but I'm wondering just how good friends they actually are / were. We know that Madge's mum is bedridden as long as Katniss can remember, but she clearly wasn't bedridden at the reaping of her sister. Do we know anything that happens in between that? Absolutely not. Other than Madge's mum has the Mockingjay pin that her sister wore. That's it. That's all we know. And so I have been racking my brain trying to be like, how on earth did Madge's mum get bedridden? Katniss's theory is that, oh, it makes sense because her mum's twin sister died in the arena. Now that she knows what it was, she's like, that was a really traumatic death. Madge's mum's gonna be heartbroken. But we know from the goodbyes that Katniss's mum knows how to heal a broken heart now, so why wouldn't she have helped Madge's mum? Question mark. I don't think that Madge's mum is bedridden because of a broken heart. I actually think she's bedridden because Snow tried to poison her, and Katniss's mum figured it out that it was happening and went and gave her an antidote so she lived. Snow wanted to punish her for something, and I don't think she was part of the original crew that were targeted because she was already arranged marriage to be shut up, right? I do genuinely think that she did something to provoke Snow to poison her, and Katniss's mum went absolutely not on my watch and went to save her. And I wonder if the mine explosion that killed Katniss's dad was a direct result of her helping Madge's mum not die. We also know that Madge is pretty much Katniss's only friend. So I wonder if Madge's mum was like, I can't see Katniss's mum anymore, so I need you to make sure as my daughter that she is taken care of and is okay at all costs. And we know that Madge and Peter were probably friends. In my head, Madge and Peter live next door to each other. Now, I don't know if this is actually true, but in my head, Peter and Madge have been told some level of something in code about the games and the outcome and what happened after the 50th games to all of their families, and why District 12 is the way that it is, and who Snow actually is because of the 50th games and because of everything they learnt, which is why they're all going to be in trouble in arranged marriages. This is going to be super interesting to see if this is true. I think there's a deeper meaning as to why Madge befriended Katniss, and I think it has a lot to do with whatever happened with their mums. My last headcanon theory number 20 is, and this is the most spicy, this is probably the most likely one to be wrong, but in my head it's true, that Hazel is actually a descendant of Lucy Gray. Hear me out. This, I know that this is spicy. I know that this sounds ridiculous. I know you're like, Yazzie, what do you freaking mean? There's no way. But hear me out. We know that all of the names of the Covey are after poems, right? The William Wordsworth poem, Lucy Gray. At the end of the poem, it talks about a hawthorn hedge. Guys, what's Gale's last name? Oh, that's right, it's Hawthorne. What do you mean? Why? Well, I was then looking at it, and there's also a lyrical ballad called The Hawthorn Hedge, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this is like low-key Covey coded, question mark. What is the one theory that no one has been able to string together a solid sentence about in the trilogy? Is Suzanne Collins' own theory that a bunch of District 12 think Gale and Katniss are cousins. This would make it plausible, but here's why I think that Hazel is a descendant of Lucy Gray. She knew when Snow was leaving 12, right? I think she probably quickly skirted back into 12, told Maud Ivory or whoever she could find, whoever in the Covey was there, hey, this is what I'm doing, deuces, peace out, this is what just happened to me, make sure this lives. And then skirted. She probably went, bye, I'm actually gonna go to 13 because I know 13 exists. They would have known that District 13 didn't actually die. This is only 10 years after District 13. They're like, we're dead, we're exploded. But also, what does she have to lose at this point? She has nothing to lose by going and trying to see if 13's alive because she has no life in 12 because of what just happened because of Snow. She's probably going to go to 13, probably going to have her little life in 13, and then she's probably going to get sick in one of their pandemics that they have because they have pandemics often in 13 and they have no way to control them. So I think she's probably go to 13, get married, live her little life, tell people about what happened, and then she's gonna have a couple kids. She might have lived through a pandemic or two at this point in 13, and she might go to her kids, hey guys, if anything looks like it's getting out of hand, I need you to escape up the top, this is how you do it, and I need you to go back to 12, this is how you get there. And wait until there's like a mine explosion, they happen all the time, then going crying, pretend that your parents died, and they'll put you in the community home. In my head, this is how Hazel got back to 12. Now, I have no way to say if this is accurate, but in the first chapter of the Hunger Games, Gale's like, I think we could do it. I think we could make it. I think we could live out in the woods. How would he know unless his mum did it? Unless someone in his family did it? How would he actually know? Gale doesn't even know about the lake house, Katniss says. But did his mum? How would he know if he can't even walk to the lake, if he doesn't even know where that is? How would he know? Maybe he does know, because it doesn't seem like he's surprised in Mockingjay when he gets taken to the lake with Katniss's little film crew. And then she sings to the Mockingjays, The Hanging Tree. Also doesn't seem like he's surprised by that song, even though he's probably never heard it because it's banned. Yeah. Gale is Covey fam. But I will say he doesn't like the Mockingjays. He's very much like Snow in that he hates the Mockingjays. And I have a lot to say about Gale. I think Gale is just as much a narcissist as Snow, and I think it really has affected Katniss's mental health going into the first arena. We see her constantly thinking about Gale, but we're not here to talk about Gale, we're here to talk about Hazel. It's probably plausible that Hazel and Haymitch have some kind of friendship from their childhood, because when Katniss sends in Hazel to be like, please clean Haymitch's house in Catching Fire, Haymitch doesn't kick up a fuss. Haymitch is just like, I guess. Can you imagine? It's going to be so interesting to see if there's anything said about Hazel in this book and just how much we know about her. Because in my head, she's hardened like Gale is, because Trauma City, she also lost her husband in the same mine explosion that Katniss's mum lost her husband. And I think it's plausible to think that all of them were friends. I wonder even if there was some kind of other older sibling that married Hazel. We don't know. And again, that would plausibly make them cousins, right? And so it's just like very interesting to think about these things that we have no context for, but all of District 12 seems to believe that they're cousins, so there has to be a reason for it. And I really truly do think that they could have pulled on this information from their brains in the 50th game to make this make sense, because how else would the whole district come into agreement with that? Anyway, they're just some of my headcanons for the Sunrise on the Reaping. Some of them are really based around my Christian values. Others are just things that I've noticed about the ties through and different things from the trilogy to the prequel and what we already know about Haymitch and his games. And I hope you had fun listening to this. So let me know if you agree or disagree with my theories in the comments. Let me know if you have other headcanons that I haven't talked about, and if there's any Christian headcanons that you have, because I think that's really interesting. Let me know if there's any scriptures that you guys think that they're gonna pull on in Sunrise on the Reaping specifically. And like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I will see you again very, very soon. Let me know different content ideas that you have around Christianity. Specifically right now I want to focus on the Hunger Games because it makes sense to. I have a lot of content ideas for it. I'm thinking of doing the Christian symbolism in each of the books separately. I'm thinking of doing my little INFJ, Katniss, Snow and Haymitch and how trauma has affected them. I'm thinking of doing all the times that Gale was a narcissist in the trilogy for educational purposes, because I think it's so necessary because y'all are missing it. And I think it's really important that as Christians and as people who are consuming media, we recognize what narcissism is so we can put an end to it, because these people are not good for the world. So I will leave that with you. Let me know what you want to see next in the comments, and bless you all. Have a lovely evening. I'll talk to you soon.